We're gonna finish now Siman Reish Mem Beis. We've been on it for a few weeks. We learned a tremendous amount of insight ranging from all sorts of different topics, challah to laundry to food on Shabbos and other very relevant topics if a person can't afford both. Now we're just gonna deal with one last question, which is if a person has a certain small amount of money and he could either use the money for expenses for Shabbos or he could use it to pay a worker that he owes money to. This obviously isn't talking about someone who has a couple $100,000. This is talking about someone who's paycheck to paycheck type of person, and now he has limited money. So either he could buy with that money better food for Shabbos, or he could pay a worker who he owes money to. So the question is, what does he do with this? Does he use it for Shabbos, or does he use it to pay a worker? So comes along the Ber Halacha over here. I'm gonna wrap it up with this. The Ber Halacha in the beginning, by the way, just says that you should honor Shabbos properly. Going to Sefer Shabbos, fine. Then the Ber Halacha, there's the second Ber Halacha of the page on in Hilchot Shabbos, and he says like this. He says over here that if a person only has a little bit of money, so let's say a person has a little bit of money, and now a worker is coming to him, an employee that he had, he's coming to the employer and says, "Can you please pay me over here?" Right? So if he finished his work the day before, so now, so let's just talk about something. You have multiple potential psukim and yisurim daraisa problems from the Torah and psukim that obligate the employer to pay. All right. Number one, b'yoyim otitain scharo. That's the classic pasuk. That on the day that a person works, you have to pay him on that day. Number two is that you have over here the Baal Tishah, not to delay his payment. So if the worker completed his work the previous day, the im gamru ma'esmol ein alav rak isur the Baal Tishah kimavor v'choshim mishpat simin shalom tesev ches. If the worker already finished his work a day or two or before, so now you
Now,
don't have this additional prohibition. You just have the prohibition of Baal Tishah. Vukashar Baal Chov Da'amma. It's like you owe money, right? So therefore, you wouldn't need to pay. However, Talmud Chacham, you need to look into this. Maybe he should pay. Heichidam Yichila Hashem. What's the case of Chila Hashem? Gemara and Yuma pay Vav over there. Discussed it. It could be that the Talmud Chacham would have to, but for someone who's not a scholar, you disarchlit them apol. That would be something else from the day before. However, if it was that day that he finished your work, you need to pay the worker. This applies, by the way, a lot of times housekeepers, um, uh, babysitters, uh, gardeners. They do work for you Erev Shabbos, right? On Friday, you need to pay them that day. In order to fulfill the pasuk, fulfill the pasuk, that you shall repay him on that day. Even though that by doing this, you're not going to have anything now to use for your Shabbat expenses. You're not going to be able to cover it. Or you could verbally appease him and say, please wait until after Shabbos. Because the obligation to pay a worker in its time is from the Torah. But this is only midrabanan, which means to pay a worker on time, that is an obligation from the Torah. There are so many Orthodox Jews who just totally aren't aware of this. This is a mitzvah daraisa, and a person is over, he violates an isser daraisa, prohibition from the Torah if he doesn't pay a worker on time. However, honoring Shabbos, owning Shabbos, as we've been learning, simple explanation is that it's only rabbinic in nature. Even according to the poskim, like we saw, who say that it's daraisa, owning Shabbos, sham havi ase v'loisase, lo ati ase v'dachi loisase v'ase. Over there, by paying a worker, there's a positive and a negative commandment. So you can't have a positive and negative commandment pushing off what? The asay, the positive mitzvah of only Shabbos. Right? So right? This is talking about over here, we have to categorize something. That if he brought the work that he did, if he finished it, and you receive the pleasure. For sure, if they did housework or babysitter, housekeeper, etc., for sure you have to pay them. The question is, let's say for dry cleaners. So if they finished your suit and it's in their store, you don't have to pick it up. And if you don't pick it up, you don't have to pay them.
Mhm.
It's only if they brought it to you. Dilav halchi, yesh lebal habayis eitz acheres. If that's not so, you have another tactic. So lekabel menu. Just don't receive the service that they did from him. And then you wouldn't transgress something. Even if the worker said, "Oh, please come and take it from me." Right? Like the Shita Mikubetza says in Bava Basra. Bava Metzia, excuse me. I'm going to just talk out a few points over here from this Be'er Halacha.
Thank you.
First of all, regarding this last point, something was done, but you didn't, but he didn't bring it to you. Just want to point something out over here. The Aruch HaShulchan. This is over. This Aruch HaShulchan over here is in Choshen Mishpat. It's in Siman Shin Lamed Tes, which is a very important siman. One day I hope to share it with the world. And Siman Shin Lamed Tes in Choshen Mishpat, the Aruch HaShulchan in Os Ches says, and I quote, "V'im ha'uman ritzoino lahachzir lo hachafetz v'lakabel secharo." Let's say if the worker, he wants to return the object that he did work on, right? L'kabel scharo, and he wants to get paid for it. V'hu eino roitzer l'kabel, but you don't want to get it back. V'yish lamanas, and you have the money, nearer to over it. It seems like you would transgress it. So in other words, if it's a specific task that was done, for example, I'm making up something. A guy calls from the shoe store and says, "I just fixed your shoe that needed soles or something, or whatever. Fixed it." And he says, "Could you please try to come now?" So he obviously wants it out of his store because he has limited room, and he wants the money. So in that case, fine. As opposed to if the dry cleaners, they have a thing, a policy. You got 30 days to pick it up or something, and there's no issue. They don't call you, so then there's no problem. This is according to the Aruch HaShulchan. According to the Chafetz Chaim over here in the Be'er Halacha, it seems like, no, it's no problem at all. Even if the shoe guy calls you and says, "Please, come get your shoe and pay me," you don't need to. So that's a machlokes between the Chafetz Chaim and the Aruch HaShulchan. Actually, in my notes, in the Aruch HaShulchan, in this physical sefer that I have, I wrote at the side, look at this Be'er Halacha over here, that he argues. It's actually interesting because, why? Oh, right, yeah. There's no footnotes of the Mishnah Berurah in Aruch HaShulchan, only in Aruch Chaim, in the new version. That's why it's not there. That's why I had to cross-reference that. Anyways, so this is an important idea. Now, just want to take this opportunity to talk about a few halachas related to Shin Lamed Tes. I'm assuming no one's learned it. Shin Lamed Tes in Choshen Mishpat. Yeah, Schirus. Yeah. So it's a very easy and applicable learn, actually. I mean, it's all relative, but I found it easy. And you have to know what your stipulation is. For example, when we hire people to watch our kids, right? So the ones that are consistently watching them for hours a day, so I always try to prepay them. I pay them after the first day of work for the other remaining days. Most of the time, you don't need to do that. Most of the time, it's assumed that you get paid after the work is done. And it's stipulated you pay them at the end of the week, right? When you have jobs, such as in the medical field, tech jobs, they're not paying every single day. They pay bi-weekly. Some jobs pay monthly. So you have to know whatever the arrangement is, and it's agreed before. And then you don't need to pay on that day. Doesn't need to be on that actual day. It should be pointed out, and this is incredibly important. We hold Shulchan Aruch and Siman Samach, the Torah. Before we do a mitzvah, we have to intend that we are doing the mitzvah. Mitzvah svichas kavanah. When we pay anyone for doing work for us, we have to intend that we're fulfilling a mitzvah d'oraisa. A lot of people don't realize that. We have to have that intention. We are literally fulfilling mitzvahs that are d'oraisa over here. And we have to have that intention. Now, it could very well be, even if we don't have that intention, it's assumed that we had that intention, but most people don't have that intention. So they should really have in mind that they are really fulfilling a mitzvah d'oraisa. So in short, just some of those relative points of you have to pay on time. This only applies if the agreement is to pay on that day or when the job is done and when you get benefit from it. But if it's not that type of job, so then it would be different. That just has to be pointed out. So those are a drop in the ocean of some relevant halachas regarding payments. Just want to bring something up. A couple of years ago, whenever it was over here, I was running the Pros Bowl over here. It was like
Remember that? I
for
think you're
5 days, yeah. And the last day was crazy. There was so many people.
right.
Yeah, everyone waits to land. But throughout the those days that I was doing it, I mean, it was only a couple hours and at night or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact schedule. But I was seeing a recurring theme, which was plumbers coming in and saying people owe them money. And therefore, it could be that it's perhaps a loan, which will get slashed during Shemitah. And therefore, they just want to they just want to
It's not true, right?
make sure that it's not slashed. No, it could be a stringency, an idea of doing it. But, I'm not talking about the halachas of principle over here.
Okay.
I'm talking about the hashkafas of how
Okay.
could people owe money for weeks, months, I mean, even years and just not pay it back? Okay, look, I can't judge about it because I was never in that sort of financial position. But person's got to just be responsible. Do what you could to make that payment. I mean, you know, I don't know what people are why people can't pay. Just eat bread and drink water for a couple days or something so you can make the payment. I don't know. Figure something out. This is Daraisa we're talking about. And it's moral. I mean, there's nothing to do with being Jewish. It's
Right.
just pay for the service, you know. I tell all the people who pay me money, I tell them that I don't care when you pay me. I just don't care because I don't want them chas v'shalom to be over in a sedar. Now the different arrangements over all of the many years of payment methods and everything, I don't care. Whatever it is, I'm ochel. It's what it comes to. You know, I don't want anyone chas v'shalom to be over these isurim daraisa, even though they probably don't even realize how severe these prohibitions are. So this is certainly some very important ideas to think about over here. I just shared some very real ideas. I mean, I think everything that I say is pretty real, but kind of biased for myself. Um, from what I remember, I need to get this thing down. Yeah. From what I remember, there's a little bit of a baralach over here of a was Vahadar commentary on this. Yeah. I don't really think that they add much. They're just giving pshat over here. So we don't need to see it. Yeah, this was actually something that I wanted to share. The quote over here in this footnote, the Pri Chaim says, through fulfilling the mitzvah of paying a worker on time, b'yom mutitin scharo, you'll be zoicha for the nefesh yisera. That was actually a popular video than the nefesh yisera that we did on Thursday.
What's
Yeah,
what's
that was popular.
Nefesh Yisera?
Neshama yisera.
Why is it calling it Nefesh
Whatever, it's
Yisera?
just, I don't know. So
Okay.
neshama yisera, you'll be zoicha that extra soul on Shabbos. B'yom mutitin scharo, roshei tevos, are Shabbos. Scharo, shin,
Biyama.
Beis, Biyomo, and then the tough, Titin, Shabbos. So the idea is someone that fulfills the mitzvah of paying a worker on time. Yomo Titin Scharo Shabbos. A paid worker, he has a segula. Ubi Zoicha
Does it work with tax returns?
for the Neshama Yisera. Wait, hold on, let's finish this verse and we'll come back to it. So he says, someone who fulfills the mitzvah of paying a worker on time will be Zoicha to fulfill it with the Neshama Yisera coming in properly. It's measure for measure. He pays the worker, Hashem will repay him back. He'll get Shabbos. B'yom Titin Schar Shabbos. He'll get the special Hashem Yisera. What about tax returns?
The tax return for somebody,
Yeah.
the job is done, and you filed it for them with the IRS, with the taxing
Oh,
authorities.
okay. So when it comes to tax returns, I know a lot of accountants, a lot of very great accountants, great people. I'm obviously not an accountant, so I can't say firsthand how an accountant typically gets paid. I never looked into it, but I would assume it would all be based on what the predetermined arrangement was.
Mhm.
So when was it predetermined that you're going to get paid? After you finished doing your work, after they got their refund? What exactly was the arrangement? Are you working as a self-employed individual, or are you part of a tax? Are you part of a accounting firm, in which case you get paid weekly or bi-weekly anyways, and it has nothing to do with the returns that you do. So it all depends on the payment method. Should also be pointed out, this actually reminded me of something else very important. I didn't think that I was going to start saying all this many halachas off the top of my head, and it was going to take this much time to do this. But before a person hires a worker, the price has to be agreed on. It has to be. This is a big problem that I've seen a lot of times. People get a little flaky. You hire a contractor, someone to do a job on something, a plumber or something. The price has to be specified and agreed upon before any work is done. And if there's going to be a rider, so to say, a bimed devar mamurim, something will happen that will change the price. It has to be specified beforehand. We will not move on unless the new price is agreed upon. If not, we're going to walk away. And this is what it will be. These details have to be discussed before. They will save tremendous amount of effort. I'm sure you know people, or this has happened to you, where there was a major miscommunication about this. And you don't want anyone to be upset. You don't want them to throw out a number that's too high at the end, and you're like, oh, okay. But they also don't want you to throw out a number that's going to be too low, and they're going to say, no, no, that's not good. So you have to be very careful not to.
What they're saying, write out a contract, all the things that are gonna be done, if anything pops up, then it has to be discussed.
Look, it depends with the contract, how official you're doing it and how big the thing is. But you have to discuss, and there has to be an agreed upon price for what you're doing. And that way there's no problem because there could be major issues over there that come out to be problems. So that has to be discussed that there's no issue. So
Well, the Rav is always saying, Rav is saying that this it has to be official. Obviously, it's a hamish, like I'm saying, it's not. You have to have a contract. You have to have a star.
you don't
You have
look
to have
look
something that's going to say.
yeah. Look, you don't need an official document. You don't. I mean, look, it'll be
What's reading?
preferable, but look, when you're doing something the real way, obviously the legal way, there's going to be documents, there's going to be taxes, there's going to be there's going to be everything's going to be written out beforehand. Even if that happens, there are moving parts that could change. That could make the job longer, harder, unforeseen expense, unforeseen circumstance. For example, let's say they're repainting the interior of a house. So while the house is being repainted, it's happened to us. So they saw that there was a problem in one of the closets with the wall. They said, should we fix the wall in the closet? It will be an extra $100, making a number up. This is 5 years ago. I remember it till this day. So then we agreed upon it. We said, yes, please. Put a new piece of sheetrock. Put what's that called? Can't believe I'm blanking. In sheetrock, you put the thing. What's that? You don't know what it is.
Plaster sheet.
It's not the plaster. No, no, no. Can't believe I'm blanking on the thing.
Plywood.
No, it's the drywall, but it's the
Drywall?
no, no, no.
I don't do that. I don't. What's it
No,
like?
you put the thing in between the
Drywall.
cracks so it doesn't see, and then you smooth it with the thing. Can't believe I'm blanking on that name. Whatever. You put that thing on, right? You do all that, and then you repaint it after. It takes time. You have to wait. First, you have to get it in the right spot. You have to measure it. You have to cut the sheetrock, right? All of that. Compound. That's the name. So then after the sheetrock's
Okay.
done, you have to take the spatula type of thing, and the compound. You also have to get the materials, of course. You have to do it carefully over and over and make sure it's good. So all of this over here, this all takes time, takes effort, and therefore you have to specify that before just doing that without their consent. This happens also. Any profession, you go to a dentist, right? He said, okay, the filling, standard filling, I'm making up a number, it's $500. Okay. So let's say insurance covers part of it, let's say it doesn't, whatever. He finally does some drilling, whatever, and he says, no, this is more than a filling. This is gonna need something more. So before just proceeding and then leaving the guy with the bill of $2,500, you gotta specify, what do you want to do? Now, usually the patient's in a very tricky situation because what's the guy gonna do? He's got now a hole in part of his tooth, and he's gonna get a quote from someone else. What's he gonna do? So a person, it's got to be an agreed upon price beforehand that everything is fair, and that's what it is. Now, sometimes the guy will say, you know what, I want to do something. It just happened to us yesterday. We drove 30,000 miles, one of our vehicles, and we have our first major out-of-pocket expense for the vehicle at 30,000 miles, new coolant. Now, I knew it was coming. I knew this was the one expense that pretty much you have. The coolant is an expensive material, and I knew it was going to cost a couple hundred. We go to the shop, we go to the local mechanic, he couldn't do it, whatever. And then we go to the dealership, whatever. Yeah, okay, it's gonna end up costing 550. Why? Because they charge for labor $210 an hour, and it's a process. I knew it took around 2 hours. So he said, you know what? We got 3 kids with us. We got to pick the other one up from the school. 4 kids. Let's just do it. We're not going to drive to for the dealership. We just don't have the time to do it in our life. It's just going to be Bittelsman, Bittel tire. And how much will we even save? Maybe 100, maybe two. And how much time is it going to waste? And it's dangerous to drive this car. So we just said, you know what? Okay, we do it this time. In 3 years from now, assuming we still have the vehicle and don't get another one instead. So now we know we're going to call multiple places first and see what the quote is. But that was discussed before giving it to them. And then I signed the document and said that it was fine. So that's the real way to do things. Now, a lot of times you do it, more of the Heimische way, a barter type of situation or whatever. So that you could do that. So if a guy comes, I was thinking of putting in 3 windows in the house myself. We have a lot of windows and they have major issues with them. You got 2 panes of glass. One of them's cracked on like 2 of the windows. And you have little pieces of glass at the side. And the screen on the window, on the top right and on the top left, you could see that bugs could get in. So the screen is very nice. I changed the screens myself a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not that hard. It's actually fun. You have a special roller tool, you put the thing in and then you cut the thing. It's actually fun. But it has a whole thing at the top, so I tried stuffing it with tissues. Eventually the tissues, the rain just brings it down. The wind, it doesn't. It's just a pain. You put duct tape, eventually it's no good. But let's just get the windows. The windows could cost anywhere, from what I'm told. I didn't really look into it so much. 250, and then you get the Anderson windows for 600, which are apparently better. Top of the line, they last longer. After 10 years, it doesn't get blurry what you're looking out of. All of those things, it lasts longer. And then there's even a higher tier, 1,000 window. So then you have to look into labor. So I told the guy, because the contractor, whatever, someone recently gave me a car, a Jewish guy, said I was thinking of doing it myself. I watched a video on it years ago. Not that hard. It's 12 screws. You drill it in the wall and then you just take it out. So now there's a lot of things that could go wrong. You need to caulk it after. And then if the sill needs to be removed, you're molding on the outside. So it ends up being a whole to do. It takes hours to change a window properly and to do it properly. So he gave a quote. He said he would do it for $750 for 3 windows, a 1-day thing for the labor. Plus, then you have to pay the materials, right? So you don't need a permit to change a window. It's not a big thing, right? You could do it yourself. I don't think you need a permit. I'm assuming you don't. Yeah, I don't think you do. So, so that type of agreement. So let's say we have an agreement. We said it's 750. Right? So now let's say he tells me, now he has to be honest. I'm assuming he's gonna be honest. Let's say he tells me, look, you know, this is a job that's more than 750. It's whatever. So if he tells me before the job that it's more than 750, they'll look at it first. Usually that's what they do when it comes to big projects. They just look at it and they give the estimate. So if he tells me before this is going to be more than 750 because your house is 100 years old and the way that everything is and this detail it's going to take long, fine. But if he tells me in the middle of the job this is taking longer, that's something else. Remember one time we hired workers to do a job for us. I think the price was like 1,500. I thought it was a great deal plus materials. Basically took a room and converted the whole room, sheetrock, sound insulation, weather insulation, put a couple lights in there with the light switch. I mean, it was all that with like even a floor,
Mhm,
1,500. Great deal. It's a very small room.
mhm.
It was where the oil tank used to be in our house. We got rid of it. Now we have the gas. We don't have the oil anymore. That's another story. So in the middle of the job, he said, I think the price is a little too low. Look, it made sense because when he first gave me a quote, I haggled him down like crazy.
Right.
I haggled him down. Back then, I used to haggle more and everything. So in the middle of the job, he tells me this. Now, we'd agreed upon price. I didn't have an obligation to give more money. I ended up being nice. I gave him a couple hundred more, which was still a good deal. I just told you how much we
Right,
did.
right, right, right.
That's an excellent deal. Brand new everything with paint job.
Sounds like,
And he put in a window.
sounds like the fisherman, the insurance I did.
Yeah. And he put in a window. Just think about that. 1,500 for all those skills.
Right, 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 right.
It's a tremendous amount of work. So that is beyond the letter of the law on my part. Now, really technically you could come, there was no official document, it's all word of mouth. You could also do, if you don't need an official document, you could also do, and this is something that I've seen also, you text someone. That's a document. If you text someone, I paid you X amount of money, and he said received, that's a document. Or you could text someone the conditions. The document's a nice thing to have, but the verbal agreement that can't be overlooked. So basically, I thought that we were gonna get to the Khazar over here on the thing.
Let me just undo that. I wonder if that's the actual policy.
But he asked for shus from the office, but Timmy probably didn't know.
Oh, he did? He did?
Yeah, he did.
Oh,
He was
is-
asking.
Okay,
Yeah,
I realize, oh, okay.
yeah. Yeah. So, miscommunication.
Gotcha, well.
That's this stuff. The reason why we ended up spending so much time in it is because once you start talking about it,
Yeah, it's a lot.
there's a lot to talk about. Granted, I went on some rants with some personal stories and everything, but you gotta know. I think my all-time favorite story is we saw there was water coming from the basement from under the walls. So we called a couple of plumbers. They said behind the brick wall we can't do anything. We call Roto-Rooter. Terrible company, by the way. Tremendous ripoff. They came in, looked at the wall. He said we could do it. $3,000. We could do it. 3,000. Great. Could you break down that price exactly? Why does it cost $3,000? He said, well, it's behind the brick wall. We're gonna have to break the brick wall. I said, look, we have a problem with another sink. You go upstairs, you do that sink. You give me the sledgehammer, whatever. I said, whatever tool you have to break down the wall, I'll break it myself. Took me around 8 minutes. I broke down the wall. We located the problem over there. There's a small area in the wall. I broke the thing. First time I ever went through bricks. That's why they're bricks. Tough to break. I broke the thing. He came back down. He said, you broke the wall? Okay, $300.
Wow.
So it went down 90% in 8 minutes. That's the most money I ever made in 8 minutes in my life.
Wow.
I'm actually doing something physical. And then we had a $60 coupon, so it brought it down to $240. So it went from 3,000 to 240.
Wow.
That's the agreed upon price. So you got to agree upon the price. You got to feel the guy out. Just because a price is thrown out, it's not set in stone until it's agreed upon.
Mhm, mhm.
It could be haggled. Our house price, I straight up, when we walked in the house, they didn't even show us the whole basement the first. Oh, maybe they did. I don't remember when it was. We walked around the thing. All right, well, I said straight up, what's the lowest you're willing to go? He told me a price. He said, actually, I'd even go with it. And then I haggled him down a little. Look, it wasn't make or break. It was probably, what was it? It was at least 10% off the price. It was something. It was eight,
was
six,
something?
6, 7%. It
Everything
was
counts.
something. So he said later, my wife said, you cost us some money. I got in trouble because of that. I said, I'm sorry about that. But Lamaisa was agreed upon price. That's what it is.
Uh-huh.
So everything is all negotiable. For every rule, there's exceptions, but it's got to be decided before what the cheshbon's going to be. Yeah. All right. All right. Amid Hashem, tomorrow we will begin with the review on our seminar. Everyone should have a wonderful day.
Okay,
Sure, for a good day.
those teeth are hefker or?
I don't know.